Welcome to Family Gamer TV and the Valkyrie Fields Golf Court, which is one of the levels in the campaign for Swords and Soldiers 2, a side-scrolling RTS, that's real-time strategy game, that's coming soon exclusively to the Wii U. This is the sequel to Swords and Soldiers, obviously, which is a game that came out originally on the Wii in 2009, so it was a digital game on WiiWare and then got ported to other consoles after that, including an HD version for Steam. Now what you can see happening here is that you've got the first few units being sent out by the player on the left, which is us. At the moment we're playing the Vikings. These women who are currently saying things in Scottish accents about how favour fortune's the gold, obviously their job is to collect gold. So they're resource gatherers. So like in most real-time strategy games, you have to gather resources that are found in the level and then use them to build your units that you then use to go out and conquer and to defeat your enemy. So in this case you've got these female Viking characters going out and gathering gold from this hut here, and then they'll reach out further into the level and gather gold there as well. And you can see a tech tree popping up on the screen now. That's what you need the gold for, to unlock further units so that you can use them in the game, in the level. Each level has a different tech tree, so different units that are available to you. So you've got to kind of come up with a different strategy each level you play, which makes it more interesting than perhaps some other real-time strategy games where you just have randomly generated maps and then you decide what to do each time you reload. Now you can see some of the other units coming out here. This guy with a huge hammer on his back, he's obviously going to go and do some fighting, so that's one of the male Vikings. Obviously an interesting thing to mention here is that recently in the news we've discovered that female Vikings did actually do more than go out and gather resources in the real world. In real history, female Vikings fought as well, so haven't seen all the units in this game, but hopefully they'll reflect that. But for now we've got this red-haired, bearded guy who I think represents the main character, whose name is Redbeard. The story is that he is off to rescue his wife, Olga, from Blackbeard, his enemy, who was also the enemy in the first game, Swords and Soldiers, so those who played the first game will recognise him. In this stage, however, we're not fighting Blackbeard, we are fighting some demons, which is a new faction to the game. In the original game, it was Vikings, Aztecs, and the Chinese. And in this game, it's Vikings and demons, which are kind of a range of goblin-type creatures, and a third faction that hasn't been announced yet. Now you can see the kind of fog to the right of the screen as we scroll along to the right there. That is just like in real-time strategy games like Civilization, where you've got the bits of the map that you haven't discovered yet are covered in fog, and as you manage to get your units out there to explore, the fog clears away and you can kind of see what you're dealing with. You can see along the bottom of the screen a representation of the level, and you scroll along, you can see where all the units are. They're color coded so that we know which ones are ours and which ones are the enemy, which is really handy, and you can see the whole length of the level. Now this is 2D, so it's a lot simpler than some other real-time strategy games. So games like Civilization, which are based on a kind of hex instead, although those are obviously a lot more complicated than this. Now here you can see that there are a lot more units on the screen, so we've got some of the more goblins coming over, moving left to try and tackle our Vikings, but we have a lot more units than they do, so we've moved quite far across to the right, and we're destroying at the moment a demon portal which produces more demons throughout the level, and that was our first objective in this level. And now as you can see we've got a little bit of animation showing us what the next objective is. I think that's the demon base. It was appearing on the right there, and that is a grill which we're going to use. That's going to support our side. It means we can get a new unit which is called the meat thrower, a vulnerable ranged support, which means that like in other real-time strategy games, this is the kind of the ranged character, kind of like the archers in Civilization. You've got to keep it back from the action to make sure the enemy doesn't get close enough to hurt him, but if you can keep him back, then he's got a good ranged attack, which means that he can take out enemies without getting too close. Just like these enemies are doing here, although just like these Vikings are doing here, although they are suffering a bit at the hands of the demons. And you can see we can also build things in the level to help us. So you can build a mana tower, which I think is what that is, which gathers mana, which we can use for spells. Now spells are also on the tech tree. We can unlock those with mana, and then we can use them. You can see at the top you've got how much gold we've got on the left and how much mana we've got on the right. Now the gold on the left, the the kind of wheel that has ZL in the middle. That's all the units around the edge of that. Now that is how you use your units. You use the ZL button on the gamepad. And on the right, I'll see when we've cleared this objective. On the right, you've got the blue ZR button, which has your spells on it. So as you unlock more spells, you'll get more spells around that wheel. What you can see here is a super unit for the demon side. Now each faction has one super unit that's a really, really powerful unit, way more powerful than all the others, and will take some taking down. So you have to think strategically and make sure you've got enough gold and enough spells to tackle it. Otherwise, it will just charge straight through all of your creatures, which seems to be what's happening to us here, and destroy your base, which is what you don't want. So I think, possibly, so this is a new spell called Old Larry's Rampage. So when you activate this spell, as you can see here, you get a little cutscene, and you get to tap the buttons to get Larry to punch the enemies as he charges through them, which is a nice little break from the real-time strategy. And it's a good way to clear a load of enemies at once, although it obviously does cost quite a bit of mana, so you have to keep an eye on that. You can't just keep using it. Now, the fact that you've got the units and spells provides a really good mix to this game. It means you don't just have, you know, like in a tower defense game, kind of Plants vs Zombies type thing. You just send out your units and then wait and see what happens. But in this, you've got the units and the spells to contend with, so you've got kind of two different angles to it. You can also see on the map that you've got multiple pathways to choose. So although it seems simple with its 2D layout, you can actually choose different paths to go down. And you've got things like, so there's a pile of gold on the lower pathway, which the female Vikings will want to gather, but then if you send them down there, they might get attacked by enemies and they're incredibly vulnerable, so you've got to make sure you've got, see, the super unit was about to come down to the left there. Now, you just saw it turn into a sheep. That was another spell. I think it's called polymorph, which means that you can turn enemies into sheep, though it only works temporarily on the super unit because he's so powerful. It's just a way to make him vulnerable for a while and stop him charging forwards like he's doing right here, getting dangerously close to our base and still with 50% of his health remaining. You can see one of our female Vikings coming out there in dangerous proximity. But we've turned him into a sheep again, which means that he will be a little bit more vulnerable. His health is going down gradually, although it's taking quite a lot of our units to tackle him. There we go, finally he's down, which is good. Now, this game looks pretty great, not just mechanically, obviously, but visually as well. Compared to the original, which had quite simple graphics, this is all hand-drawn and HD to bring it forward to the next generation for the Wii U. And it's an indie game as well, so kind of a downloadable game. It's made by the same people who made Awesome Noughts, actually, called, I think, Romino. So you can see in this level, kind of with the rain falling and everything in the trees in the background, and that fog away to the right, and all the stuff happening in the background, like the sheep falling down and delivering gold, and the sheep in the foreground and stuff. There's quite a lot going on, but it's so colourful and kind of visually engaging that it doesn't confuse you, which is really good. I have this problem with games like this, ones with complicated systems, where if it looks too confusing, it makes me not want to play it. But this one, although it has a lot going on, it's got the different units for each different faction, it's got all the tech trees and everything, and the gold and the spells and the mana. It still looks simple enough and colourful enough and engaging enough that I could give it a try. Now, the original came out on WiiWare first, and then it was ported to PC, Mac, Linux, PS3, 3DS, iOS and Android. But this game currently is only coming to the Wii U, and it should be coming soon, before the end of the year. There's Larry again, charging through. Always a good way to clear the screen. Yeah, this game is coming exclusively to the Wii U for now, which is actually a really, really good thing, because the Wii U is a great console, but it hasn't sold too many, especially compared to the other two next-gen consoles. And obviously what games like this are proving, though, is that you don't need machines as powerful as the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One to have great games. This game looks really, really nice. It plays really, really well. It's loads of fun. It's got a single-player campaign and multiplayer and everything, and they didn't need the power of the Xbox One and the PS4 to do that. And so hopefully this will encourage some more people to see the Wii U as a more viable gaming platform. And like I said, it's got multiplayer as well to it, which means that it'll last longer than the campaign takes you. The multiplayer, in fact, might be the main draw of the game. So unlike here, where we're playing the campaign against the computer, in the multiplayer, you each pick a faction and you play against each other, each starting at different ends of the map. In the original game, you had that as split screen, but in this one, because it's on the Wii U, which is something that other consoles can't really do, you can have one player with the Wii U screen and one player with the gamepad screen. So one player is looking at the TV and one's looking at the gamepad. Obviously, you might think that the person who's looking at the TV screen has an advantage because the screen is normally bigger and everything, but given that you use gamepad controls to play this, given that that's what you'll be used to and you'll be used to looking down at the gamepad screen, that person might have an advantage as well. And the cool thing about having people on separate screens is that when you're playing a game where you don't want to, you might not want your enemy or your friend who happens to be your enemy for the sake of the game, knowing what you're doing, what spells you're unlocking, what units you're buying and things like that, they won't be able to tell because they won't be able to see. You could even sit at opposite ends of the room if you wanted to. Now, we finally got to the end of the level, which is great. So we're slowly destroying the enemy base. This is what the demon base looks like. And that's the final objective cleared. As I said, you've got multiple objectives through the levels, which gives you a real sense of progress. And you've also got these little text snippets that pop up. I think that's Blackbeard. To tell the story, which makes it more interesting than just a typical kind of silly RTS, which you might think this was at first, but it's actually got a story and everything to it as well. As I said, according to the developers, this is coming out before the end of the year. Although Nintendo sometimes you can't guarantee when the game will come out on Wii U because they need to go through the verification process and everything. But hopefully we'll be finding out what that third faction is and we'll be playing the game soon.